The night was thick with darkness when Adaze felt the cold, cruel grip of her stepmother's hand around her arm. "You're worthless," Ngozi hissed, her voice full of venom. Adaze could barely breathe, her heart hammering against her chest as her stepmother dragged her toward the forest. The last thing Adaze saw before the earth swallowed her whole was the twisted smile on Ngozi's face, a smile that promised a fate darker than death itself. The sun sank behind the distant hills, casting a warm, golden glow over the village. The fields stretched endlessly, their crops swaying gently in the evening breeze. But in Adiz's home, there was no peace, no tranquility, only the looming, oppressive shadow of fear. Each day, she waited for the inevitable, knowing that as the sun dipped low in the sky, her stepmother, Ngozi, would find something to punish her for. Whether it was a meal too salty, a cloth not folded properly, or even a simple mistake in cleaning the house, Adaze knew that she would never escape the cruelty of her stepmother's wrath. The warmth of the day never made it inside their home. Today, though, Adaze felt a chilling premonition deep in her bones. She could feel it in the air today. The punishment would be different. The tension in the room was thick, like the air before a thunderstorm. "Useless child," Ngozi's voice cracked through the silence like a whip. "I told you not to touch that basket of yams. Now look at what you've done. You've ruined them all." Adiz's heart sank. The basket had slipped from her hands, spilling the yams onto the dirt floor. She had tried to save them, but her clumsy fingers had failed her once again. She could feel her stepmother's angry gaze burn into her, like a dagger aimed at her soul. Adaze stood frozen in the corner of the room, her eyes downcast. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a loud reminder of her helplessness. She could feel the sting of tears forming in her eyes, but she swallowed them down. There was no use. Ngozi never listened. Ngozi never cared. The heavy silence was shattered when a slap landed across Adiz's face. The force of the blow left her cheek burning, her skin stinging in protest. She staggered back, her legs trembling beneath her. "I'll teach you to be careless." Ngozi spat, her voice thick with venom. "You're nothing but a burden on this family." Adiz's world tilted. The words, the slap, everything felt unreal. But in the pit of her stomach, she knew that this was just another chapter in her life. A life ruled by the iron fist of Ngozi's cruelty. Tears welled up in Adiz's eyes, but she fought them back. She had learned long ago that showing weakness only made things worse. Her stepmother never showed mercy, never showed compassion. Adaze had been raised with the belief that she was nothing, that she had no place, no worth. And so, she had become silent, hiding her pain in the quietest corners of her soul. It was easier this way, easier than trying to fight back. But today, something was different. The rage in Ngozi's eyes was unlike any other Adaze had seen before. It was deeper, darker, a madness that threatened to consume them both. With a growl of fury, Ngozi grabbed Adaze by the arm, her fingers digging into the girl's delicate skin. Adaze winced, but she didn't dare cry out. Her stepmother's grip was like iron, and as she dragged her out of the house, the evening air grew colder, the shadows stretching longer. "Come with me," Ngozi hissed, her voice low and threatening. "I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget." Adiz's mind raced, but her body moved on its own. She had no choice. Her feet stumbled along the rough dirt path, the ground beneath her like jagged stone, biting into her bare feet. Every step was a struggle, each movement dragging her closer to an unknown fate. The chill of the evening air seemed to seep deep into her bones, but the fear that gripped her heart was colder than the wind. They walked for what felt like hours, though it was only a few minutes before they reached a secluded spot deep in the forest. The trees here were dense, their twisted branches blocking out much of the fading sunlight. The silence of the forest was unnerving, broken only by the sound of their footsteps crunching against the dry leaves. Adaze could feel the weight of the earth beneath her, the heavy pressure of something terrible waiting to happen. "This is where you'll stay," Ngozi muttered, her lips curling into a cruel smile. The words sent a shiver down Adize's spine. The look in her stepmother's eyes sent a cold tremor through her entire body. "No, please, Mama, don't do this," Adaze whispered, her voice shaking. But the words barely left her lips before Ngozi shoved her roughly to the ground. Adize's head hit the hard earth with a sickening thud, her vision blurring for a moment. For a second, she felt as though the world had stopped. There was no sound, no movement, just the cold reality of the earth pressing against her. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears as she struggled to push herself up, but Ngozi was already on her, her hands gripping Adize's arms with a terrifying strength. "Get up!" Ngozi snarled, dragging her to her feet. The girl stumbled, dizzy from the blow. But her stepmother was relentless. With no more than a quick glance at the ground, she began to dig. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a futile attempt to push away some earth. But Adize's heart began to pound in her chest as she watched. With each swing of Ngozi's hands, the ground was torn up, the dirt flying in every direction. And then it became clear Ngozi was digging a grave. The horror of it dawned on Adaze as the hole grew deeper. She tried to scream, tried to beg, but her voice was lost in the overwhelming sound of the earth shifting and crunching. The world around her seemed to grow smaller, suffocating her. Why are you doing this?" Adaze managed to whisper, her voice barely a breath. Her throat felt tight, constricted with the raw fear that clawed at her insides. She couldn't understand. What had she done to deserve this? "Because you deserve it," Ngozi shrieked, her face twisted into a mask of rage. "You've been nothing but a burden to me since the day I took you in. It's time you learned your place. You will never be anything but a servant, a slave in my eyes." Adize's heart shattered at the cruelty in her stepmother's words. The pain of rejection, of being nothing more than an unwanted burden, was almost too much to bear. She had longed for love, for kindness, for a family who saw her as more than just a tool to be used. But all her dreams had been crushed beneath Ngozi's harsh, unforgiving words. Tears streamed down her face, but they were not enough to quench the fire of fear that blazed within her. She tried to pull away, tried to escape, but Ngozi's grip was iron tight. There was no escape from this. There was no way out. As the grave deepened, Adaze could feel the air growing colder still. The earth seemed to swallow the light, and the sky above darkened, as if the very heavens were turning their backs on her. The world was closing in. "Please, Please, Mama," Adaze begged, her voice trembling with desperation. "I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. Please, just don't. Don't do this." But Ngozi's face was a mask of cruelty. She paid no heed to the girl's pleas, her hands moving quickly, efficiently, as though she had done this before. With a sickening finality, Ngozi shoved Adaze into the grave. The earth fell over her, heavy and cold, pressing down on her chest. Adaze struggled, but the weight of the dirt was suffocating. The world was becoming smaller, darker, colder. She gasped for air, but it was no use. The earth pressed down, drowning her. "Goodbye, Adaze," Ngozi sneered, her voice distant, as if she had already forgotten the child beneath her feet. She turned and began to walk away. But just as the last of the dirt settled over Adize's head, something strange happened. A faint rustling sound, barely audible, reached her ears. It was a soft, almost imperceptible sound, but to Adaze it was the sound of hope. Someone was coming. Her heart skipped a beat. The earth pressed down on Adaze, the weight of the dirt suffocating her as her heart raced with terror. She was trapped, buried alive by the woman who was supposed to care for her. Her stepmother, Ngozi, had dragged her into the forest, thrown her into a shallow grave, and left her there to die. Adaze could barely breathe, the earth pressing against her chest. But in the darkness of her grave, one thought clung to her mind. Could anyone hear her? Could anyone save her from this nightmare? The silence of the forest seemed to close in around her, the stillness a cruel reminder of her isolation. But then, through the suffocating blackness, a sound broke through, a faint rustling, a whisper of movement. Adizi's heart skipped a beat. Was it a dream? Was she imagining it? No, it couldn't be. She wasn't imagining it. Someone was out there. Help, please, someone help me. Adizi's voice trembled, weak and broken, but she forced herself to cry out again. Help, please, someone help me. Her voice echoed through the trees, swallowed by the vastness of the forest. But Adaze didn't give up. She couldn't. The darkness was closing in, but she refused to let it take her without a fight. Then there it was again. The rustling closer this time. The sound of someone moving quickly through the underbrush. The footsteps grew louder, closer. With each passing second, Adizi's heart beat faster. Could it be someone coming to help her? Could someone have heard her cries? The earth above her shifted, and with a sudden surge of power, strong hands dug into the dirt, pulling it away in chunks. Adaze gasped for air, her lungs burning with the sudden intake of oxygen. Her body trembled, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from the shock of feeling the cool night air on her face again. A face appeared above her, framed by the faint light of the moon filtering through the canopy of trees. It was a man, rough, strong, with a gaze that spoke of a life spent in the wild. His features were sharp, his eyes full of determination. He reached down, his hands gentle but firm, as he cleared away the remaining dirt from her face. "I've got you," the man said softly, his voice reassuring despite the urgency of the situation. Adaze could hardly believe it. She had been trapped in the earth, suffocating, and now she was being pulled from the grave. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but all she could do was cling to him as he carefully lifted her into his arms. Her body too weak to support itself, she felt safe in his grasp, but as they moved away from the grave, her eyes scanned the clearing. In the distance, just at the edge of the trees, she saw a figure, a shadow moving through the underbrush. It was Ngozi, the wicked woman who had buried her alive. The one who had left her to die was retreating into the darkness. Adiz's heart pounded in her chest. She was still alive, still free, but Ngozi's wickedness had not been stopped. She had to know what would happen to the woman who had caused her so much pain. What will happen to her? Adiz asked, her voice trembling as she looked at the hunter who had saved her. Her mind was still racing, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The hunter's eyes hardened, his face set in grim determination. "Don't worry, little one," he said, his voice low but steady. "She will face justice. No one escapes the consequences of their actions." The hunter moved swiftly, carrying Adiz through the forest and toward the village. The journey seemed to take forever, but finally, they arrived. As they entered the village, word of Adiz's miraculous survival spread like wildfire. The villagers, shocked and enraged by the cruel actions of Ngozi, gathered in the village square. Whispers of disbelief filled the air. She buried her alive. Who would do such a thing to a child? Adiz was placed on the ground, surrounded by the elders of the village. Her body was still trembling, but she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. The warmth of safety. For the first time in what felt like forever, She was not alone. And for the first time, she knew she would not have to face this alone, either. The village elder, a man with deep lines etched into his face, stepped forward. His voice was heavy with authority as he addressed the gathered villagers. "What we have witnessed today is nothing short of monstrous," he began, his eyes fixed on Adaze. "A child buried alive by her own stepmother. This cannot go unpunished." The villagers murmured in agreement, their faces twisted with anger and disbelief. "Adaze has suffered enough," the elder continued. "We will ensure that this cruelty is not allowed to continue." The hunter who had saved Adaze stepped forward, his eyes meeting the elder's. "I saw her. I saw Ngozi fleeing into the forest. She must be brought to justice." The elder nodded solemnly. "We will find her. The village will not stand for such evil." And find her, they did. The hunters and the villagers scoured the forest, searching for any sign of Ngozi. It wasn't long before they found her, hiding deep in the woods, her face twisted in fear and rage. She had thought she could escape, thought she could outrun the consequences of her actions. But she was wrong. Ngozi was captured and brought back to the village, where she was forced to face the people she had wronged. The elders, with grim faces, convened to decide her fate. Adaze stood in the square, watching as the woman who had tormented her all her life was led before the villagers. The woman who had buried her alive was now at their mercy. What will happen to her? Adaze whispered, her voice barely audible. She had suffered so much, and now the moment of reckoning had come. Would Ngozi be punished, or would she escape with some cruel twist of fate? The elder stood before the gathered crowd, his voice carrying the weight of his decision. "Ngozi," he began, his voice steady but full of authority. "Your actions have shown that you are a danger to this village and to its people. Your cruelty has no place here. You have caused enough pain." Ngozi's eyes flickered with fear as the elder's words sank in. She had thought she could escape, but there was nowhere to hide now. The village would not allow her to continue her reign of terror. "We have decided," the elder continued, "that you will be banished from this village. You will never set foot here again. You will be sent to the evil forest, where no one will hear your cries, where you will face the same torment you've inflicted on others." Adiz's heart raced as the elder spoke. The evil forest was a place of darkness and despair. It was said that once someone was sent there, they would never return. It was a punishment worse than death. Ngozi's face twisted in anger, but there was no escape. The villagers were firm in their decision. She had caused too much suffering. She had to face the consequences. "No, please," Ngozi cried, her voice shaking with fear. "You can't do this, I'm sorry." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. The villagers, their faces hard with justice, ignored her cries. With a final, harsh motion, they turned away from her and led her into the forest. The sound of her struggles echoed for a moment before the forest swallowed her whole. Adaze watched in silence, her body still shaking, but her heart swelling with a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, the weight of fear began to lift from her shoulders. Ngozi would no longer torment her. She would no longer be the source of Adizi's suffering. The village elder turned to Adaze, his eyes softening with sympathy. "You are safe now, child. No one will harm you again." Adaze nodded, her heart still racing. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. She was free. The village would never forget the cruelty that had been inflicted upon her. But now, with Ngozi's banishment, Adaze could begin to heal. The darkness that had haunted her life for so long was finally gone, replaced by the warm light of hope. And for the first time in her life, Adaze believed she had a future free from fear, free from the shadows of her past.